Delegates, 2 minutes to join, please. Kindly bear with us. We will start shortly. Good morning. I believe we can start. We've given our delegates enough time to join. If you can hear me, kindly type in the chat. Good morning. Oh, great. Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning feels good. Right. I believe you can also see my slides equally so. Give me thumbs up if you can do. Thank you. Okay. Let me greet everyone officially and welcome you to this webinar titled Eliminate the Guesswork in Decision Making Through Discrete Event Simulation with Simio. This is quite a technical topic, and hopefully it will resonate a lot with those who are in the productivity improvement area, the specialists in that area, operations directors, industrial engineers, and anyone who's really serious about productivity, operational productivity improvement. This is going to talk about how do we remove waste in all our production and service delivery processes through database decision-making to achieve operational excellence. My name is Tato Monageng. I am a strategy, projects, and performance leader at ProEd Group. I'm also the managing director at ProEd Group, and a warm welcome to you. Our main speaker for today is Francois van Heijsten, who is a discrete event simulation subject matter expert.
Sorry, are you moving your slides? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it's moving from the side. Thank you.
Yes, my slides are moving.
Just move now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Francois is a consultant with Analista Consultancy Ltd and has over 30 years of experience in simulation, consulting for clients in South Africa, in the Middle East, and worldwide, really, to name a few, USA, Canada. And his projects span warehouse logistics, manufacturing, mining, business processes analysis. So he's had, the privilege of working with big players in the industry, your Emirates Airline, Anglo American, Standard Bank, to name a few. And he's also a part-time lecturer in simulation. After the introduction, we will have a quick poll, which is going to be given by one of our guests as well, Mr. Robert Monageng, who is a senior lecturer in mechanical engineering. He has a strong background in manufacturing and production planning. His interests include discrete event simulation modeling, Lean Six Sigma, supply chain management, and he's currently pursuing his PhD in industrial and systems engineering at the University of Pretoria with a focus in simulation and systems modeling. So he will be facilitating us in terms of our questions, in terms of the poll that we are going to run. A big thank you to you two gentlemen for affording us this grace. We'll also then go into the core content. We'll give the main speaker the floor and then talk to upcoming opportunities and then tackle the question and answer session at the end. May I please highlight that within the Teams platform, there is a chat box section. If you look at the top there, you will see the chat section, and then there's also a Q&A session. So kindly type in your questions throughout the session in the Q&A box so that we can consolidate them as we are moving along. We will also, at the end of the webinar, give access to the webinar recording and the slides, and any services required will be available to provide those details. So yeah, I'm looking forward to this one. Just to introduce who we are as ProEd Group, we are a citizen-owned company in Botswana, and we specialize in delivering world-class training and consultancy within the P3M model, portfolio, program, and project management. And we serve clients mostly in Botswana, but we go beyond as and when we are required. We deal a lot with governments. We deal with parastatals. We have some private clients. Not only do we develop strategies, we also offer products to help in the implementation of those strategies in terms of where there could be project management training. We've got products such as Prince2, within the program management space and within the strategy management space as well. Our products are accredited and we ensure we deliver quality assured products. We engage experts in the industry. And, our aim is really to provide that quality and, be innovative, give our clients the access to, innovative solutions as well to help them in delivering their strategies. Our mission is to deliver best practice management training and consultancy to enable successful delivery of strategic portfolios. And we pride ourselves in the values of quality, accountability, collaboration, innovation, and compassion. This is us. So at this point, I am going to invite Mr. Monageng to run this session as we transition to give Francois the platform. Mr. Monageng, you are welcome. Kindly unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. I was saying good morning and to you, Tato and Francois, and as you welcome warmly our delegates to this very important webinar. Can I maybe get a thumbs up if I'm clear to everyone? So you want me to share from my slides, or are you going to use yours?
I am sharing.
Okay.
I'm still sharing.
Okay, thank you. If you can just put them back, because I can't see them from here.
Oh, you can't?
Yes, we've kind of lost them, at least from my side. I don't know if anybody else can see them. They're back now, so maybe you can go into presentation mode. Thank you. Yes, I have a simple role this morning, but very, very important because it creates an expectation of what we are going to get in the next delivery by Francois. And it's really the main reason why we are here this morning. I think we will all agree that we have a lot of challenges in terms of productivity in Botswana. And this stems across all the way from operations to policy. But here we are talking more in terms of operational productivity. So I want you to think carefully for those who are in industry in terms of the challenges that you are probably having in your organization in terms of productivity and service delivery. I've put, or we have at least 5 statements there or questions that we are trying to get you to think about this. The first question, which is number 1, and if it resonates with you, you can just type 1 on the chat box. So the question is, in terms of productivity or service delivery challenges, in terms of your organization, what are the challenges? Would you say you are currently struggling with the clear definition of what is waste and how to quantify it within your value creation processes? That's the first question. And then the second question could be, perhaps maybe you are struggling with insufficient resources in terms of the skills and the technology to be able to communicate clearly to decision makers where productivity or service delivery challenges are within the value creation so that they can be able to take informed decisions as to what to do. Or could we say you are having an issue with resistance to change? You have this big idea that can transform the operations, but you are struggling to communicate that in a way that the decision makers can be able to appreciate how your proposed solutions will probably have a significant impact on the operations. Or maybe you tend to use more of guesswork in decision making without necessarily knowing whether the decision that you are taking is going to have a meaningful impact. Or maybe it's number 4, where you have poorly designed production or service delivery systems because you didn't have a way to see them, how they're going to work beforehand, before you implement. Or maybe it's just some other reason that is not captured within the 4. So if you could put maybe either a 1, a 2, a 3, 4, or 5 in the chart that resonates with you in terms of the challenges that you are having, then that will allow you to be able to follow nicely what Francois is going to deliver next. So with that, I think you can take 30 seconds or so to look at the questions, and then you can drop either a 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, and then Francois can take over. Over to you, Tato, and thank you very much. And thank you and enjoy to the delegates.
Thank you, Mr. Monageng. I guess you'll be monitoring the chart as well. So far, we're having 2 coming on in the chart space. Let me go here. So far, that's what we're having. Kindly screenshot.
We have a 2 and a 3 and a 5. 5 is culture, and then 3 would be resistance to change or guesswork in major decision making, which I think invites Francois very nicely in his presentation. Over to you, Captain Francois.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Francois, at this point, I'm going to stop sharing on my side so you can share your slides. Kindly screenshot this slide so you can make your comments, and as Francois is doing his presentation, you can reflect to how the simulation modeling he's presenting can assist in the work that you do. Francois, the platform is yours.
Thank you very much, Tatu. Let me just do the sharing. Right, hopefully everybody can see my screen now. You can maybe do the same thing, give me a few thumbs up if you can see the screen, so we're just sure that we are all literally on the same page. And also let me maybe just switch on my camera just so you can see who's talking. Right, so there we are. Right, Tatu, thank you very much for this opportunity to present this webinar together with ProEd. I appreciate this, and I hope that everybody that's attending is going to take a few points from this presentation and a few valuable points for that matter, so that you can use that in the workspace where you are busy on a daily basis. And also, in the end, we're going to do that again, but we want to invite you to join the training where we sort of touch the surface today. In the training, we are going to present it to be presented in a few weeks' time. We're really going to dive deeper and show you exactly how to use this technology. As you can see on the screen, it's about discrete event simulation, and I'll talk very shortly about what exactly that is. The tool that I'm going to show you and give you a few glimpses about is called Simio. And it's all about discovering the benefits of simulation. There's a lot of things called simulation, but we're going to look at what that is, what's the typical types of simulation and so forth, and then learn how to apply that in decision making. And that's the practical part, because it's fine that you have a great tool and everything, but in the end, it must have a value and worth to your company. And that's helping in decision making. Right. So let's carry on. So on the agenda, I'm just quickly going to flash that intro again. It's part of the presentation. Tatu already showed a few things there. Then we are going to look at simulation, what it is, why, what's the benefits, and so forth. Then we're going to jump into the software and show you how typically you'll go about building a model by using a very, very simple example. Obviously, in real life, the models are much more complex and so forth. And then after that, I'll just have a look at a few models that we've done, a project that we've done, by showing you sort of recorded videos of those models. Now, I know the bandwidth is not always that good, so we may see the animation and the movement in various, I guess, grades of speed and quality and so forth, but we'll deal with that when we get there. And then we will jump into questions and answers in the end. All right, so I'm trading as Analista. I'm an independent consultant after having my own company for about 18 years and so forth. At this stage, I'm acting as an independent consultant. So whoever is needing consulting services, I can assist on that. Right. Then let me just check here. Right. So, brief introduction, as Tati said, I have a few years of simulation. I started my career or I discovered simulation basically in 1991, and I've been hooked ever since. And really, it is a passion for me to use this. And the reason for that is that in a fairly short time, one can really add value to your clients' needs and the questions they have, and help them to answer those difficult questions and so forth. So you can see, I've been working, fairly widely with regards to, the global scene in different companies. Because over the years, because we have been representatives of the American vendor and, selling the software, giving training, we really had the opportunity to work with customers in basically all types of industries. And I think during that, I learned a lot, and I'm still learning. Each project, there's something new. And so since 2023, I'm now acting as an independent consultant. Right, just to give you a quick overview of the industry experience, a little bit deeper than the previous slide. See, that's where we've done projects and over the years and assisted companies and decision makers, to make the right decisions. And one of the points that Robert mentioned, reduce waste, identify opportunities for more capacity that's lying there, not utilized, and so forth. So in the fast mover consumer goods area, supply chain, warehouse projects, in the chemical area, I did one big project for Saudi Aramco many years ago. It was about the plant turnaround times of trucks, the whole integration of pipeline in their facility combined with trucks and the transition they had to make. In pharmaceutical, we've done a few projects in there. In banking, you saw Standard Bank, Capitec Bank, some of our clients over the years. Airports, I've worked with Emirates Airline, done a few projects there. In South Africa, I've worked with AXA, or Airports Company of South Africa, looking at the movement of the buses, transporting the passengers from planes to the terminal, and from the terminal to the planes for Emirates. It was a similar but a higher level project. There it was about the movement of crew to determine how many briefing and debriefing rooms they would need to get the crew in time on the plane, so that they're ready in time for the passengers. That was while they were busy planning the new ops building at the time. That was in the early 2000s. Then in the oil and gas, you've seen Sasol again, and then, as I mentioned, Saudi Aramco. Manufacturing, production. In agriculture, we've done an interesting project in the aquaponics space. That was quite an interesting one. In mining, we've done a huge amount of work over the years in basically all types of mines: diamond, gold, coal, copper. We've done on surface, open pit mines, deeper mines, underground, and so forth. And it is always about what is or help them determine the need for resources, whether it's conveyor belt sizes, speeds, capacities on that, whether it's LHDs, whether it's number of trucks, and so forth. To make sure that they can achieve their planned production. Then in the food industry, we've done a few, and then also in the motor industry. So during all these projects, as I said before, we learned all the time, and you pick up different things from different industries that one can apply again in the next project. Then from my side, the offering with regards to simulation, seeing that we're going to talk about training and maybe your further involvement with simulation. So we do market and sell the software itself. Because we do that, we also provide the technical support to our customers. Then we provide training, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit later. And then obviously consulting services, doing projects for companies, and where they have a need for answering complex process questions. What's the best decision to make? Now, let's move a little bit closer now to the reality before we jump into what is simulation and so forth. Let's talk about the challenges that we have in decision making. So most of the time, the typical crystal ball everybody is talking about is a bit cloudy, and it's not telling us everything we want to know that's going to happen in future, and that makes things a bit difficult. So if we are going to change something, maybe we want to upgrade the plant, or we want to add a new product, or we want to change the layout, you are never 100% sure how the change will impact our production, our throughput, our utilization, our efficiency, because there's just too much things that we just don't know. We may have this great improvement plan. We're going to do this, that, and the following, and we're going to improve by X%. The question is, will the plan work? Will we achieve that percentage goal that we set ourselves? Another question, how many resources do we need to achieve our goals? That's also a very, very common question, people. How many people do I need? How many trucks do we need? How many, in a banking environment, how many teller counters do we need? In an airplane or the airline industry, how many parking spaces do we need to make sure that planes can have a place to park when they arrive, do their turnaround, and there's enough time to do that, and the next plane doesn't have to wait, and so forth. So why is it that we cannot answer these questions with surety, with clarity, and so forth? Why is that? I think one of the main reasons is that none of us have any clear vision of the future, because there's too much uncertainty. There's too many variables. You don't know what the next politician is going to, say at the next news conference or something that can turn things around. We've seen it already this year on the international scene, where the whole world's economy is completely in turmoil because of, all the noises coming from the USA. So we don't have the future. But closer to home, in our own business, things are a little bit less complex, but still it's very complex. So the question is there a solution? And that's now what we're going to discuss the rest of today, in this session. We're going to talk about this technology, discrete event simulation, right? Which can show us elements of the future that has an impact on us in our business, so that we can make informed decisions, right? And we can eliminate really most of the risks. I told Tatu before, I'm not the typical salesman that will tell you, we will show you the future in full and we will eliminate all risks. Because in reality, ladies and gentlemen, that is not true. There's always some risks, right? But we're going to eliminate most of them and really make sure that you have basically an error-free implementation when you're going to do your next implementation. And we will show you how things are going to occur in future, how things are going to play out in future if you look at your particular process, your business process, and the changes that you've made. And we will point out things like unnecessary queuing, work in process, WIP, running away, utilization that's maybe people are completely overutilized or completely underutilized. That's the kind of elements that we're going to show you how that will play out in future, so that you can make good, solid, scientifically based decisions and really then eliminate most of the risks when you go into implementation phase of your new plan. So our solution is then discrete event simulation, and that's what the rest of the talk is going to be about. And just a bit tongue-in-cheek, crystal balls don't work anyway. We have to make scientifically based, solid decisions. We cannot just, play a guessing game. And one of the feedback points already was, guessing in decision making is a problem. And I share, many people say, but I have a gut feeling this is going to happen. And yes, you may be right, you may be in the right direction, but you cannot quantify that upfront. And that's one of the big problems. You cannot quantify how change will impact your business. And that's the kind of things that we are going to look at and that we can basically offer you with this technology of discrete event simulation. So let's now dive a little bit deeper. What is simulation, right? If you hear the word simulation, I guess, different people think different things, have different answers. So a short description of that is it's a model of some sort that represents reality, right? I think that is basically in a nutshell, what is simulation. Now, let's look at some examples. I'm pretty sure everybody know about flight simulators where airline pilots are being trained to handle different situations, because the flight simulator is now simulating or representing different runways across the world, different weather conditions, different planes that they're going to fly with, which has different controls. So in the end, it's about training those pilots with this. Remember, what's a flight simulator? It's just a huge model of all different scenarios that sits in there, and you choose one, say, right, we're going to do this route, and then you represent that particular route. And he sits in that flight simulator. It feels like a real plane. It looks like a real plane. Like on this picture, when you look at it, it looks like, the real landscape down there. And they can train the pilots. So they go through these different things, storms are happening, and let's say, for instance, they don't take the right decisions and the plane crashes. Then you just hit the reset button and you start over again and say, right, let's try again. No lives are lost, no money is lost, and so forth. So that's a flight simulator, a very, very important part or component rather in the airline industry, right? Then on a completely different scale, maybe more on the, where people are relaxing and enjoying themselves, games. The games that you have these days played on computers or online and so forth, they are absolutely insane. The plots that's in these stories, the animation that you see. But what is it really? Each of those games is simulating or representing some other situation, whether it's a specific battle, whether it's a race that you are doing in that game, and you want to come first, obviously, and you race against all these other drivers. It's simulating that parts of a reality of some sort, and you are in the driver's seat and you have to make decisions in that game, right? So that's the kind of things that all of us know, right? So now, one step further, let's talk about discrete event simulation, or DES for short. What is that now? And this is now with Simio, the tool that I'm going to show you in mind. So it's a computer model containing intelligent objects. If I can just focus on that, even that typically there, that's an object that you see in the Simio environment, the software. So it's an intelligent object with properties built in and logic built in there that gives it that intelligence, right? It's also a model containing further process logic. And these objects and the logic that we see here, that's in the background now, are driven by events. Now, what could be an event? Let's say, for instance, we model a new bank branch. The bank wants to set up a new branch. They want to know how many tellers they need, how much waiting space they need, and so forth. So an event will be typically when a customer walks in or through the door of that bank. That is an event, right? So each time a customer walks through that's an event that kicks off a process. And the process is typically the customer will look, is there a teller available? He will walk to that teller and he start with his transaction. If not, you'll say, okay, but there's the queue, so I'll wait in the queue and so forth. So, these models are driven by events, and it could be various events, but it's all driven by events. Then further, these models do have animation. So that means you can actually visualize your process. It's not just a bunch of tables and with numbers all over the place and plots that you get graphs afterwards, and you have to make sense of that. You have a picture that you can look at that shows you your process in reality, and that really makes the model come alive. And it's a twofold thing. This animation, from a modeler's perspective, it helps him to make sure his model is running correctly. It helps him with the debugging process while he's still developing the model. But even more important, when you're going to present your model now to your audience, which is your client, or even if it's internal, it may be all your managers, the board sitting there. You have to present now what your findings are in this project. Then that animation that they see, that visual side of the project, that's the only window they have into the project you've done. And if you've done that well, they can much easier than just by looking at graphs and those kind of things, identify where they're in process and see, oh yeah, we see that. We see there's a bottleneck, and yeah, we agree that is where we normally have a problem. And then when you start to show them, the better solutions, say, oh, now the bottleneck is away. We don't see the queuing anymore. Our throughput is increasing, and so forth. So the animation part is very important. And then lastly, and I guess that is actually why we do simulation, and what, the last component then of this discrete event simulation, it provides us with results. And to me, the important thing here is that it provides us with time-based results. That means we will typically model a week in the life of this business, or a year in the life of this business. So the results that you get is spanning over time. So you can see a certain picture developing. If you look at, for instance, if that result is well, in this case, this is a simple one. This is patients going to see a doctor. You look at the time waiting at the doctor. In this case, it seems like it has stabilized and so forth. But you can see maybe if the doctor is moving too slowly, or if there are too few doctors, let's say at the trauma unit of hospital, then you'll see that that time waiting that you are recording is slowly but surely increasing and increasing and increasing. That means you need more doctors, for instance, right? So the fact that you look over time and results are generated over time, it's a very important thing compared to spreadsheet models. Now you can really build insane spreadsheet models, very powerful with good answers that you get from that, but that is still giving a snapshot. If this are the inputs now, that's the answers. If that's the inputs, that's the answers. So it gives you snapshots of whatever you are investigating, but it doesn't provide you with what happens in between and so forth. For instance, the project that we did in the agricultural environment, we started off by developing quite a powerful spreadsheet. that'll tell us for this startup, you know, what will happen, will we make money or not? So the spreadsheet model showed us that yes, if we look at a year's production and so forth and everything to do with the startup, we will make a profit. What that model did not show us is from what point during that year will we make a profit. The simulation model that used the same inputs that we used for the spreadsheet model showed us that for the first, I think in that particular one, the first 6 or 8 months, we will need capital to carry the business because, you know, during that stage, the company was still making a loss. And then gradually the loss became less and less up to a certain point where there's a break even at month 8. And only the last 4 months of that first year, you know, profits starting to grow and increase and so forth. So with the spreadsheet model, you don't have that knowledge. But with the simulation model, we can see that picture developing. And we can see, right, that means for this first 8 months, that's the capital that we have to provide for and that we have to get from investors or, you know, loans or whatever the case might be. So, right, so that's a short summary then of discrete event simulation. Computer model with, in our case, intelligent objects, additional processes, animation, and that is then creating results. So now the question would be, how do we handle a project? How do we approach a project? You know, where do we start? What do we do? How do we approach that? So what we normally do is we start to create a model of the current scenario, the as-is situation, where we are right now. And the reason for that is that we have to build a model that we can validate its output so that we make sure that the results that we get from the model are the same than, you know, what we are measuring in reality. If, for instance, we measure in the model that we get 100 units through per hour, then that should correlate with the number of units that we get through in reality. If we get in the model 100 units per hour, but in reality we get 500 models, then there's something wrong with the model. Either the input data is wrong or the logic is wrong, right? So that's part of the validation of that process. So when we get to the point where the model is giving us the same results as in reality, and from my experience over the years, even in spite of, you know, all the uncertainty that we have, the variance that we have in real life, we were about in every project a few percentage points, you know, from reality. We would like, you know, 99% accuracy, 98% accuracy, things like that. So with these models, you can achieve a very high level of accuracy when you compare the model's outputs to reality. So, right, so that's why we start at the as-is scenario, where how things are right now. When everybody is happy with that and everybody has confidence in the model, now we can move on. And now we can move on to the to-be scenario, where we want to be. We have certain changes in mind. We have to add maybe a production line. We want to add new products. We want to change the layout of our facility. In airline, for instance, we want to add some more parking spaces, but how will that affect the rest of our infrastructure? In mining, we're going now to the next level in the mine, right? How many of these low-wall dumpers or LHDs do we need? What is the conveyor system capacity we need? That is typically, you know, where we're going now with these changes, right? Now, the question will be, okay, but so what? Do we create a new model now with this to be? And the answer there is no, we don't want to have that. Otherwise, the fact that we have, you know, sort of established confidence in this as-is model is then of zero value. So what we normally do when we start a project, we decide together as a team, the model builder and the client and the experts in the client, the process experts, the guys overviewing from the financial side, maybe from a management perspective. As a team, we decide together, right, what is the goal of this project? Why are we doing this model? What's the questions we want to answer, right? So that's listed. Then the thing is, right, what outputs do they need and in what format, and how do they measure that, so that we make sure that in our model, we measure everything exactly the same way that it's being measured in the company, right? For instance, how do you measure utilization? Different people do that in different ways. So we must make sure from a model developer's perspective that you measure utilization in the model in the same way that your client is doing, right? And then also we decide upfront, okay, what's the different scenarios we're going to get, or at least the known scenarios. So, okay, we want to, add this new product, whatever the case might be. So all that logic and so forth is already built into the model. So that when we get to this point where we now want to run the to-be scenario, you only change the inputs. And in Simio, the software that we're using is very strong on the use of tables. So we have different input tables that we just import, and it's taking, it's very quickly to just import that. So with a new set of data, it actually brings about a new scenario, the future scenario in this case, right? So by running the model now, it's the same model, but with different set of inputs. And now you see, right, how is this to-be scenario? Sorry, I'm jumping ahead of myself now. How is this new scenario now comparing with the current scenario? And you can start making decisions. But many times, there's more than one different scenario. So then you can start to say, right, playing what if, the what if game. What if we do this? What if we do that? What if we do the next thing? So you run these different scenarios. And so what's important here is maybe to talk about that a little bit, is that you basically are setting up experiments. And that's one of the areas we're going to spend a whole chapter on during the training, is how to set up these experiments. What is it that you can control, the things that you can change, right? And what is it that you want to measure as an outcome for success, all right? So you do these various what ifs, you compare them with each other, and then you can make a really solid, informed decision on, right, this is what we want to do, that is the best plan, and so forth. Maybe on this point, I just want to emphasize the fact that the kind of insights that we provide management here to make their decisions is mainly from an operational perspective. Although you can add costs in your simulation, you can do that. That's not a problem. You can do that, but there may be other financial models. There may be human resource issues. There may be legal issues. So with all those in mind, and with a very strong input now from the operational side, the best decision can be made. All right. So why do we do simulation? It's basically one of them, or most of the time, it's about testing a new system, a new design, a change that you want to do. So you can test that and have a look at, see, is it going to work? Is it not? If it's not working, right, what can we do about that? And that brings us to the point of the model help us to identify problems. Things that you didn't think of up front. And now suddenly in the model, a problem area pops up and you see that, okay, nobody thought about this. So what are you going to do about that? And that may bring along new scenarios. It may bring along a few minor changes to the model so that you can handle these new scenarios and see how are we going to solve these problems. And in the end, then, it helps us to find the best solution, right? And management then, with all this information in the back, they could really then, make solid decisions, have much less risk in implementation. And it can happen in both strategic, your longer term, and tactical, your daily planning. Both of those, you can use simulation and really use it fruitfully to make, the best decisions. Right. So let's quickly look at the advantages that that we have here with simulation. So with everything that we said up to now, it helps us to investigate and analyze complex systems. The behavior of this is the behavior of different subsets of your process, how they interact with each other. systems that may seem to be uncoupled or decoupled, but they do have an impact on each other. And by just looking at your process, you may not be able to see anything. But with a model where we can really capture any statistics that you want to do, any kind of a result that you want to achieve in the end, you can really measure anything. So it allows us now to see what's happening under the surface. If you think at an iceberg, normally you have this saying, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So, and that's true in here as well. Normally, by just looking at a plant, for instance, we just see that little bit that's visible. We don't see everything under the surface, the biggest part of the iceberg that's not visible, right? And that is what simulation allows us to do. It allows us to look under the hood, under the water, what's happening there. With that knowledge, then, it puts us in the position to evaluate different alternatives and then choose the best one. So this is the way we're going to go, and that will be the best in the end with regards to maybe profit or throughput or utilization, what the case might be. And by choosing that best alternative, it really minimizes the risk of implementation. It's going to work as advertised. Instead of just guessing and, depending on our gut feel, now you can prove that in the model. So, right, it's going to work, and you minimize that risk. And then, as I mentioned before, using the visualization where it helps us to much better understand what's going on, see this is our system. Yes, we agree that is where we have problems. And okay, now with the new scenario, things look much better and so forth. And this is just an example of a model that I've done at some stage for a company in the gas industry, right? So at this point, I would quickly like to jump into the software so I can give you a brief glimpse of how the software works, and thereafter then we'll go back here and let me just get to the right place here now. Sorry. Right. So hopefully now you can see my Simyo screen. Can I just get one or two thumbs there? That will tell me that you can see the simulation screen now, the little squares and so forth. Tatu, can you maybe just tell me, can you see that?
Yes, Francois.
Thank you. Right. Okay, so now we are inside Simyo. So this is the simulation tool that is my tool of preference. I mean, there's other tools we can use. But one of the great things I have to point out with this tool is that you don't have to be a programmer as such. You don't have to do any coding, lines and lines of code. Everything that you need to build a model is available inside of Simyo. So you don't have to need to do any coding, right? So right, let's quickly have a look at what we're looking at. On top, we have our typical, ribbons where, it's changing context if you, click on each ribbon, like we know in the Windows environment, same kind of thing, right? So there's all the different ribbons that we have. Then in the middle area, this is where we are going to build the model. This is where everything is going to happen. All the action is going to take place right here. This is where we're going to see that visualization of our process, right? Then on the left-hand side, this is our library of intelligent objects. Now, there's a standard library, in a typical, let's say, the discrete world. Then we also have a flow library, more in the continuous world, where things like, the oil and gas or pharmaceutical, or maybe, let's say, rather chemical plants and so forth, where we have things like tanks, container entities. We have fillers, filling up a tank, emptying something. We have flow nodes and connectors. So this is our flow library, right? And then there's also an extras library, objects that have already been developed over the years by both Simyo, the company, and other users worldwide, For instance, overhead cranes, where you use the crane and the bay objects together. There's a robot which can be used in, for instance, the motor car manufacturing industry. In the warehouse environment, we have lift trucks and racks that you can use together. And then also you can, use elevators where you go between different levels in a building. So this is our libraries, our object libraries, right? And then right at the bottom, project library. And the details of this we're going to do obviously in the training. Then on the right-hand side, this is where all the properties will be displayed. The properties of our model, as in this case, the high-level model, the properties of each object, everything will be displayed on this side. And I hope that the text on the screen is readable enough. Also on top there, that's where you see everything with regards to the model. Then there's also this quick help screen. Just by hitting H on your keyboard, it's giving us a few cheat keys, a few quick keys how to do different things. For instance, to change between 2 and 3D, and we'll get to that a bit later again. You hit 2 on the keyboard or 3 on the keyboard, right? You can put a camera on some other component, and you can do the walk thing where then on walking level, and you can follow this, component or part or whatever, or person through a process, right? And so forth. So we have this quick menu for, things that you can use, a lot of, easy and sort of general kind of things. Then other thing is, we have these rich tooltips with very good explanations of everything that you see, what it is, what it's doing on the ribbons there, but also here back on the objects. You can see, what's this thing doing, what's that thing doing, and so you can carry on. Right. Then one other thing I want to point out is that Simio is a very, very comprehensive help file. This is a huge amount of topics, and you can go into this, go into there. It's indexed by all sorts of components. You can do a search and say, right, show me anything that has to do with conveyors, for instance. And there's everything to do with conveyors. And there's, if I click on this, it tells us everything, how conveyors are working, how to use them, etc., etc. So a very powerful help file that we have at our disposal. Sorry, I'm jumping back. Let me just get back to the right screen again. Right. Now I'm going to build a small model, and this is typically how you go about building models. This is going to be a very small, simple model. In reality, obviously, things are much more complex. So I'm going to put a source. Now, remember we said we are working with events that's driving our models. So a source is the object that's creating those events, right? Then at the end of the process, we also want to put a sink. That means things which could be, and we call them entities, right? It could be people, it could be parts, it could be vehicles, whatever the case might be. That's being created at the start of your process. Right at the end, when the process, it went through the whole process, we have to discard them. And that's what the sink is doing. And then right here in the middle, we're going to put what we call a server. Now that can represent a workstation. It can represent, basically any kind of resource. And there's a lot of intelligence already built in here, but that's what we're going to put in for now. And now I can go to the run ribbon. We run the model, and there, things are happening, right? So what are we looking at right now? First of all, these little green triangles, that's entities moving through the system. That's what is being generated here at the source, right? And as I said, that could be people, it could be parts, it could be anything. That is what's moving through your process, and that's being processed as you go through the process. And then, as I said, this here could represent some other workstation. So these green lines, what are they? That is queues that is related to this object here, the server object. The first one there, that's our input buffer queue. So that's where entities will wait, or parts will wait in front of the machine to be processed while other parts are being processed. That green line right there on top, that is the processing queue. That means that shows us the number of entities that's being processed right now. So they are busy, they're in the middle of the process. And at the end, that is our output buffer. That's now where, let's talk about the manufacturing facility, for instance, parts that have been manufactured at this point, or components that have been manufactured for a final assembly later on. They'll wait here to be picked up and to take to the next station. So obviously, now you can start thinking about constraints. We only have a limited space on the incoming side. We have limited space on the outgoing side. Sometimes there's no space, and that is a constraint. And then you can start working with that. So on that point, I just quickly want to show you then the properties that we have. So if I click on the server, let's just start there. You'll see on the right-hand side, there's a lot of properties, and I'm not going to go through all of them again. We're going to dive deeper in that during the training. But for instance, the queuing rule there is the first in, first out. Is it, sorry, let me just stop the model for now. It's the first in, first, last in, first out. If you do look at the smallest value, for instance, pick me the next guy in the queue that's the longest in the system, for instance, things like that, or that's the largest value. Then it's capacity type. Is the fixed capacity always available, a certain number, or do you run according to a certain work schedule? Then there's things with regards to reliability. There's no failures, or there's calendar time-based failures. There's processing count-based. For things like cleaning, after each 50 components, you have to clean the machine and so forth. Then there's some financials, activity-based costing built in here. Then remember those processes on one of the previous slides I showed you. This is where those add-on processes are called. And that is, again, we're going to dive, to that level during the training. If we, for instance, now look at the input buffer, there you can see, right, its orientation, its contents. That's as far as the visualization part is concerned. But if you click on the buffer here, and we go to the buffer logic there we can give those input and output buffers a capacity. So now the default is infinity, but you can put some other capacity there, 1 or 2 or 5 or whatever, and so forth. So each object has these properties, and that's where you set different rules, for instance, when you run that. So now what I'm going to do next is up to this point, the entities just moved in free space from one object to the next, right? Now I'm going to add some paths. So I go to the path object, and I'm going to put a path in here. And let's say, for instance, I do just a path like that, and another one there. So these are just, paths, right? That means entities are moving on that. And then say, okay, but this one here, actually, I want to rather make that a conveyor. So I just right click and I say, convert that rather to a conveyor. I can also choose to, delete that and choose the conveyor from my object library, but I can just convert it here. And by the way, maybe let's make that one with a little picture. Now we run it again. Right. So one other thing I want to mention here is that the background that you see here, hopefully you can see that there's a 0, 10 meters, 20 meters. That means size matters when you work in Simio. So you'll typically import a layout drawing of whatever it is that you do. It could be a mine layout, it could be a manufacturing facility layout, it could be the warehouse layout. So if that drawing is drawn to scale, then Simio will scale it automatically, and your distances is then sorted. So if, for instance, I make this route like this, that means there's a longer travel time because the route is longer. I can also right now add another path in here, and you'll see sometimes now entities will move that way, sometimes they'll move this way, right, where you have to bypass this. So this is the very, very, very basics of running a model. And now I can actually run this. Let's go to the run quickly. Can fast forward this And then we look at our results, and then we have a pivot table with all our results. This is one of the ways of showing or displaying the results, and this is what we use most of the time. And now we can maybe create a unique or a report, but instead of searching through all the detail here, say maybe we are only interested in the time in the system. So we say, right, only show us the model entity, okay, and we only want to see the numbering system and the timing system, so we can use that filter there and say I want to see the numbering system, how long they spent in the system, and we can now name this, and we can say numbering system and time in system, and this is now our one report, sort of a customized report. And so you can go back now and say, right, show me everything, or show me this particular report, right? And then we see this. So the number of numbering system on average was 2. The maximum ever reached was 10. The time that they spent, from the time entering the system till the time exiting the system, 0.0, and this is currently running in hours. So we can change this to minutes if you want to do that. Then we say, right, average 0.5 minutes, maximum 1.3, and so we carry on. We talked about experiments. So just to show you, excuse me, briefly, let's quickly do an experiment. Later on, we're going to look at that further. So we can run an experiment now. And the thing is, with simulation, we are working with a lot of statistics uncertainty. That means you have to do multiple replications, multiple runs of the same thing, so that we can get to the best answer. So now we've quickly ran an experiment here, and you saw that it ran very quickly because it's using all the cores and all the processes on your computer. So these different replications can run simultaneously. Right. So I'll show you just now an experiment in another model where we can have a look at it, some more detail there. Then in this model again, there's some subcomponents of an object. It's a main object, but also these entering and exiting nodes. That's also objects in its own right. Okay. So then I think you've seen now how to run this. Maybe last thing I just quickly want to show here is that, let's say we want to give that server there a nice picture, right? So we can go down there, and let's say we go to this. It's a drill now. Now if I hit 3, this now is a drill. And maybe I just want to make sure that that is the right height, this processing queue. Let me just move it a little bit in the vertical level, right? So there we are. Can zoom in a little bit, move it here. And then when I run it now, when I put it in 3D, we run the system. And let's see what's happening. So then entity is coming. And there we saw that, right? It sits here. Okay, maybe my queue should just be a little bit lower so it looks more realistic. So there it is, nice in 3D without any, difficulties to do that. Right. Okay, so I hope this gave you a good idea of how a typical model can look. And as I said, this is a very, very simple one. Then I just want to briefly, before we carry on, going to show you on the support ribbon, what else you have available in Simio. Sorry, let me just quickly go to the support level. So there we have some bits. That's to give us really a big learning experience. After you've done the training, there's all these. I think there's over 300 of these models. And when you open up those models, you'll see the model, a short model, already built, and with a document that explains exactly what they've done in there. So this is very powerful for helping you to learn now more about the software. When you get into a project, you haven't done anything before, you just go and search for that topic. There should be a SimBit, and you get this documentation and you get this model. right? It'll show you, right, what you should do. Then further, there's a lot of examples that you can show, and I've opened one before this. And again, those examples, they come with, it seems to me I've deleted that. So right, so let me just quickly open up this one. So I'm not going to save this one, and we're going to open up the airport example. So just give it a few seconds to quickly open. So again, it opens up with a PDF document showing exactly what's happening. And then if you run this model, and maybe let me just increase the speed a little bit, so you just get it a little bit further. And there, this is at an airport. So there the people, there's checking it at the normal desk, checking it at the kiosk, the self-service. Then they go through the scanning. You check your passport there, go through the scanner, the luggage is going through the scanner, the persons are going through the scanner, and from there they move on to the place where they the waiting areas where they wait to get into the plane. Right. Now I talked about those add-on processes. This is basically how they look. These are the processes that can be called by the objects, and that will help you to then do some more complex logic, decision logic, and so forth that's happening inside your model. Right, so this is just another example of how a model could look like. Back to our, let me just get back to the model here and our support window. Then there's a lot of books available. It takes you to a website where you can download ebooks. There's a lot of videos available. There's training options there. There's this reference guide. It tells you there at the top what version you're running and so forth. So a lot of additional support functions you also find here inside the software. You don't have to go outside to do that and so on. All right. Then I think I've shown you everything in the software. So let's quickly, one last thing. At the results, there's also this dashboard function. That is to create post-process results. And this is just one example of that. For instance, where once you've run the model, because you can fast forward it, or that means you run it without animation up to the end, then you can look at your graphs. You get quickly there. You can zoom into each of those and see, what's the waiting time, or you can switch off the filter again. And then the very last thing I want to talk about is optimization. There's a tool called OpQuest that's been used with Simio. And again, I've just run prior to this talk, this OpQuest, OpQuest is a true optimization tool, right? Where it's using very well designed optimization algorithms, right, to get to the optimum very quickly. So in this case, it's a very, very simple model where there's just 5 of these, workstations. Each of these have a buffer capacity, and they've referenced it by calling it, B1 capacity or B1 cap. This one's got B2 cap and so forth. And that's the things that you can change around. So in this case, they want to determine what is the best combination of buffer capacities so that we can maximize our throughput. So with OpQuest, you can see there it's loaded as an add-on or add-in here. We say that we want to maximize the throughput, but secondary, the average working process should not be more than 10, because then also it's not worthwhile anymore, right? And under controls, we say, right, it's a single objective, which then is to maximize throughput. So OpQuest then took over, it ran this model, and it came up with scenario number 23, with that combination of buffer capacities with the highest throughput, which is 47 units. But see, in the average working process that's shown in red, it shows, but that went over 10. So if you go through this one, the first one that we see where the average working process is less than 10 that we specified, is a throughput of 46, and that is in this combination. So that seems to be our best scenario, our best option here. Right. Okay, so I hope that all that I've shown in the last half an hour was, enough to really make you to want to come and join the training later on, where you can learn how to use this hands-on and become a user of this, so you can help your management making better decisions. Right. And I'm going to just minimize this so that we can get back to our presentation. Right. Now, briefly, I see we have about 12 minutes left. So briefly, let's just talk about a few projects we've done. This is a recording, and I really hope that on your side that you will see enough of the movement and so forth. It's a gas to liquid plant, and this is now, remember one of those points why we do simulation, test the system. This is a brand new plant, right? Greenfields, absolutely. And here it's about testing the design of the tanks, the integration of the tanks, the sizes of the tanks, and how that the loading facility where this final product tanks are being loaded, or the products in there are loaded onto train rail cars and into trucks, road trucks. Can the loading facility handle the anticipated weekly production? All right. So this is some of the outputs then created, where we get a lot of insight in the interaction between the different tanks. These are the tank levels, and you can see the interaction between those tanks. As they get fuller, they load out, and that load out is into a third tank, which is a third product. And so you can carry on. All right. So there's just how the trucks are loaded, and you can see the specific product coming through there. So we've used colors to indicate the different products. And there's some graphs looking at the utilization of the trucks on a daily basis. And then further on, let me just see, just after that, will show us some more of the statistics. So again, there, the light blue means it's a certain product. This picture here gives us now an indication of the number of rail cars used over the year. This year is winter time, and that is summertime. And we see that in summertime, it seems to be less demand on the rail cars. And the reason for that is in winter time, they travel much slower. So that means it takes longer to come back. So you have to have more rail cars, to handle your production. In summertime, the turnaround times are quicker, from the plant to the clients and back. So you need less, right? So I think that's maybe enough on this particular one. Maybe just lastly, here it's about weekly production of the various products, and it shows us then the total production. All right. So let's quickly look at another one. This is a plant upgrade in a plant that's manufacturing the fruit juice concentrate that's being used in fruit juices that we buy in the shops, right? And let me maybe just run this one a little bit sort of further down the line. So there we can see the various tanks. You can see the different colors being used and so forth. And in this case, the model was developed, and we provided some initial outputs and results, but we handed the model over to the client so that they can use it with, then obviously we provided the manual, how they can use that. And hopefully, I think after the rotation is done, let's just move a little bit further. Then you should be able to see the tank levels going up and down and so forth. So they could then use the model afterwards to experiment with, different scenarios, what's happening in summertime, in wintertime, because in the fruit industry, obviously, seasonality plays a huge role. And then they could, determine for their new upgrade, is the tank capacity enough? They don't have too big tank, too large tanks or too small tanks, just enough. And that the conveyor belts that they use here and there, that's fast enough and wide enough and so forth. So that was then this manufacturing plant. And the last one, if you just skip a little bit here as well, in the healthcare industry, here it was about determining for a new clinic that they wanted to build, how many, obviously, consulting rooms they need, how many of the different types of staff they need, how many staff nurses, how many counselors, how many regular nurses. So in this model, we built in some cost. You can see there on that part of the screen, there's some cost built in. But also, we try to measure up front, and again, looking into the future, what the typical patient experience would be. How long will they wait, with a certain number of these resources? And obviously, you want the patient's experience to be also as good as possible. And there's typically your LCD panel sitting there and showing you, or LED panel rather, showing us, all the stats. Here's some of the stats generated with regards to costs, utilization for a certain number of these guys. And you can see the plot here developing over time as we go about. Right, I wish there was time, to show more of this and run it longer, but I think that will give you a brief glimpse into the life of discrete event simulation, right? What's happening, what we can do that for, how it looks like, and so forth. So then from our side, I think as you've seen before, we've worked in quite a number of different places, learned a lot about different industries, and I'm offering, that experience to you as potential new customers of this technology, users of this technology, and to reap the benefits, of discrete event simulation and, a great tool like Simio. So I would really want to invite you to join, the course that we're going to present. The planned dates at this point is the week of the 14th of July, where you're gonna, back to our topic, eliminate the guesswork, where you're gonna discover the benefits of simulation and learn really how to apply simulation in decision making. We're gonna dive much deeper than during that week. It's really a hands-on training. Each attendee, each participant will have its own, or obviously you have to bring your laptop, but you'll have your own version of the software. You're not going just to look at what I'm doing. You're going to build your own models. We're going to do some small workshops where you can physically learn and get the feeling and the startup experience of how to use this. So we're going to really touch on how to approach a project, how to define the inputs and the outputs, the objectives. As I said, you're going to build your first model to show you how to test the logic, how to validate the results, the outcome of that, and how to interpret the results, because that's very important. It won't help if you have this whole stack of results and you don't know what's the meaning of that. You must read that like a storybook, and also learn how to set up experiments. And then the question is right now, who should attend this? And I would say anyone that's serious about process improvement, whether it's from your process improvement team, whether it's production managers, whether it's any other managers, typically, or industrial engineers, right? Everyone that is involved in how can we improve our processes in our company. That's the kind of people that we would like to invite seriously to this training. And the immediate impact that you have when walking away from the training is really that you have practical knowledge, actionable knowledge of how to develop models, and also how to use simulation now to, in the end, make better decisions. And I think Tatu will maybe refer back to this again, but you can start registering for this on the ProAid Group website. And that is my story. There's maybe 5 minutes or so left for questions. Tatu, I'm handing over to you to just take care of this last part. And if there's some questions you have and we don't have time to answer that right now, please feel free to send it either to me, you see my email address here, or send it to Tatu and she will send it to me and we can handle that offline. Thank you very much for your patience, and I really hope that you enjoyed this and that it made you excited about learning about this new technology, this new tool, and that you're going to come and join us at the training. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you so much, Francois. I think at this point we can quickly open up the question and answer session, which Mr. Managing will moderate. I believe you've been collecting the questions there. Kindly facilitate.
Yes, thank you, Tatu. I'm extremely smiling where I am. I love this technology so much. This is one thing that I think we are missing in Botswana. There are a few questions, but you can keep them coming. Some are on the chat and others on Q&A. The first question, Francois, was, are there any disadvantages or shortfalls? I suppose this with regards to discrete event simulation. That was the first question. And then the second one was, can it work for banking or finance sector? And then the third one, I'll just say the third one and then we can, okay, go ahead.
Okay. You see this at my age, I don't remember that long in the past. Okay, so let's take two at a time. Right. So first question was, I think
disadvantages or shortfalls.
I won't say disadvantages or shortfalls. I'd rather put it differently. I think the one thing that's very important, if your data is not correct, then the outcome will not be, it will be a waste. So make sure when you build a model that your client, the persons that's providing you with information, that you're on the same page. Just a very quick example. Once we did a project for, I think, for MTN, the cell phone provider in South Africa. And we asked them, listen, what's the time for a consultant? No, sorry, it was a bank. We asked them, what's the time, for the transaction to take place at the teller? And they provided us with a number. And then we developed a model, we ran it, and we saw, but gee, these guys, the timing system, adding the queuing time is very long, and it's not corresponding with what they have. And then we found out that when we asked transaction time, what they gave us was, in their mind, it's the waiting time plus the transaction time. To them, that was the transaction. We said, no. The queuing is taking place of itself, or taking care of itself. We only want the transaction time. The queuing will be an outcome of the model, right? So small things like that. So your input data, the way you define that, the way you define, the outcome, and so that's very important to make sure that is correct. One other thing, maybe I think that's maybe on the negative side, is these models, you don't do that in the afternoon. Although I've done a very short model in a few minutes here, we talk about 3 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, calendar time, or rather man-hour time. So that's maybe the one thing that people can perceive as negative. But on the other hand, compare that time to the time where you'll run your system without anything like this for about 6 months, and after 6 months you see it's not working anymore. It's not working. You have to redo and you have to guess again. So I think that makes up for that. And the second one was banking. Yes, you see here we have a lot of clients in the banking environment. So yes, you can do that. Back office, front office at the tellers in both areas. Once we did a project where it was about home loans, to determine if they have this marketing campaign, do they have enough resources to be able to guarantee the customer answer within 24 hours, right? So that's a back office of the bank. So yes, in finances, obviously, this is not a financial tool. Just remember that it's an operational tool, but operations in the financial environment, surely. Next question, Robert.
Yes, I think that was very good, Francois. The other one that possibly you could have touched on during the presentation is to do with AI. With AI, I suppose this is artificial intelligence, not Apple intelligence. How does the future of simulation modeling look like as a career choice?
Okay, maybe I'll give you 2 answers there. The one is, sorry, that's one thing I forgot to mention. One of the buzzwords these days is digital twins, right? So with a simulation model, you can really provide a digital process twin of a business, of a factory, for instance, or a plant or something like that. And the reason for that is why we can do that. First of all, we can represent the whole process in here, and you saw that we have the animation, the visuals part that's going hand in hand with that. So you can create a digital process twin, and then from Simyo you can really communicate to and from external packages, databases, and so forth, get external information and so forth. Then with regards to AI, the artificial intelligence one, built into Simyo is that facility. They have some neural networks built in there where your model can learn itself, become more intelligent, more clever, so it can take better decisions. So that's part of that AI where the model can now, it will never take over. We'll always use, I hope so, always, have the need for human beings. But the model will take even better decisions, with the intelligence, let's say the AI then built into that. So it's already here. It's not something that's only in the future, and I guess it will just improve as time goes by.
Thank you very much. I think that was well answered. And then we have another question, which is the last, at least on the Q&A, if there's not any more. This one is, would a simulation work the same way in a service environment where there's no tangible product or production? I suppose it's similar to the banking one, but you can elaborate. Thank you.
In the service environment, okay. Again, yes. Quite a number of years ago, we did a project for a huge company here in South Africa. They provide, support services to other big companies. They will, for instance, implement their total computer system, and then they will provide the support for that. Now, the support for that, that's not a tangible thing. I mean, that's support. It's about, is the resource of the consultant available to help me? How long will it take? How long will it take to get to a solution, right? So I guess that's the part that you're referring to here. So in that case, they wanted to determine at their call center and their support structure how many first-line consultants they would need. That's the guys that's handling, sort of the easy questions. How many? I think they had like a bit more complex, and then your very experienced consultants that's handling the difficult questions, right? So I mean, that's purely a service environment, right? And we modeled that, and we got very good answers there, because they had their own models in their spreadsheets, and they, for instance, they came up with a certain answer to say, all right, okay, we need so many consultants at our call centers to service our clients, so that we adhere to our service level agreements and answer the phone in 3 rings and solve the case, let's say 80% of the cases in 24 hours, and the other 10% maybe in 2 days, things like that, right? So on the spreadsheet, they said so many resources. What we could give them in addition to that, we could tell them, okay, that's fine. And by the way, our total number of resources, I think, was within one resource of their resources. I think they had like 22 or 23, we said, from the model 22.1. Now, obviously, you can't get a 0.1 of a resource. So we said, okay, let's the 22 resources. But what we could, from the simulation perspective, we could give in addition to say, you need so many first line, so many second line, and so many experienced consultants. And also, we could tell them what's the utilization going to be of those guys, to make sure that they adhere to their service level agreements. And one of the interesting things, which was sort of an additional scenario that came up from those results, is to say the first thing is that they have to say how many resources we need of the different types, to get to those SLAs at all costs, right? But the other ones, but then we saw that to make sure that you have enough people to adhere to those SLAs. Some of those guys are only 20% or 30% utilized, and that's also not good. That means you pay them sitting there and just wait for that peak time when everybody is needed, right? So then we did another scenario that they can then go to their customer and negotiate with them and say, listen, if we are not maybe achieving our 99% SLA, but we can provide you with 95%, but with less resources, right? That means it's going to cost you less. Will that be okay? And that's also what we could show from that model, is that because we have the utilization, as one of the outputs, so we can then say, right, make it less and still keep an eye on the SLA, but also keep an eye on the utilization and so forth. So yes, for sure, in the service industry, a lot of potential there.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that elaborate answer, and I believe you've captured well. I don't see any more questions on the chat or on the Q&A. With that, I'd like to return the presentation to Thato. Over to you, Thato. Thank you. You're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you so much. I just wanted to apologize for the late finish because we had asked for 1.5 hours. We're so grateful to have had you come join us. Francois, thank you so much. We look forward to doing more work with you. And you, Mr. Managing, thank you so much for facilitating us. And to all the attendees, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And the key message really there has been to eliminate the guesswork in decision making and to leverage the power of discrete event simulation with Simio. So for next steps, let us register with the upcoming practical training. The details are on our website. You can go to proedgroup.org or search on Google. You will find us. You can also email me at tato@proedgroup.org. There's phone numbers there. You can contact us by WhatsApp as well. We're available to answer any of your questions as well. Thank you so much. We appreciate your participation in today's webinar. And we invite you to follow us on our social media handles. On Facebook and on LinkedIn, search for ProEd Group and join us for upcoming webinars. We have like a quick poll to kind of give us feedback here on how satisfied you are with the webinar. So kindly just a few seconds, press the stars. Rate us, please. So otherwise, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, and goodbye, everybody.
Can you see the poll?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
And I'm expecting a rating of 5 because I'm wowed with Francois' presentation. This is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I'm just
Thank
sorry,
you very
guys.
much,
I
Francois.
went a bit over the time. My apologies for that. I got a bit carried away, but I hope that you will forgive me for that.
Absolutely. Good things there, Francois. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow.
I see people don't want to go now. They want more.
We will share more on our pages. I'm going to end the event now.